In this whiteboard session, we are going to talk about the workflow action, hold actions until, and discuss how it works in depth. This is an action that a lot of people shy away from, but mostly because they might not be familiar with how it works. But once we dive into this, you'll be eager to use this in your own workflows. So let's first break this workflow down and talk about what's happening. In this booking workflow, the first thing that we are doing is sending out a proposal, contract, and invoice to the client. Then we are resending the proposal to the client if they have not completed it within 3 days. Then we are archiving the project if the client doesn't submit the proposal after 10 days have gone by since we originally sent them the proposal. We talked about proposal follow-ups in our very first whiteboard session. Now, with most workflow actions and triggers, you can only program one action to happen when one trigger happens, like a normal do this when this happens situation. What makes hold actions until so powerful is that you can use multiples of these actions to have more than one requirement be met in order to initiate a particular action. So let's put this in a real-world scenario. You might be a business owner who requires a contract being signed and a deposit being made in order to consider them a fully booked client and move them into the booked onboarding process. By using hold actions until, I can tell the workflow, hold actions until the contract is signed, then hold actions until the invoice installment is paid, then immediately after all previous actions are complete, start the booked workflow. The most important thing to take away from this whiteboard session is that whichever action you are wanting to initiate after the multiple conditions are met, you have to use the trigger after all previous actions complete in order for it to work properly. But if you do that, you can use as many hold actions until scenarios before it. This means that they will all need to be required to happen in order for the last action to fire. Let's look at one other example to expand on this concept further. So let's pretend that in order for me to consider my client booked, I need to have 3 things done: a contract signed, a deposit paid, and a liability waiver signed. In this booking workflow, everything is the same except now I've added a liability waiver that goes out to them after they've made the deposit. And remember, I need everything to be done before they get my onboarding materials in my booked workflow. So what I did was I added another hold actions until step that watches for the liability waiver to be completed as well before the last action fires. So now my booked workflow firing is contingent upon 3 things happening: the contract being signed, the deposit being paid, and the waiver being signed. Just remember though, I am using after all previous actions complete for my trigger on the last step because that means that everything above it must be completed in order for the last step to fire.